Hey guys, today I'm filming my palette of the month review video on the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette. This palette comes with 35 shades. It retails for $38, which is really pricey for a drugstore palette, considering that Anastasia palettes are only $42. Now I know this one has so many more shades in it, but that's still pretty pricey, and it is considerably pricier than Morphe's other 35 palettes. Now this packaging is a little bit different and a little bit nicer, but still it doesn't quite make up for the price difference. So obviously you know that extra money is going into Jaclyn's pocket. This palette is available from the Morphe website, and of course you can use a 10% off affiliate coupon code, but it is also available at Ulta, which is where I recommend you purchase this. A lot of Ultas actually have this in store, but you can purchase it from the Ulta website, and the $350 off 15 coupons do work on this palette, as well as a 20% off coupon, so you can actually save more from Ulta than you can from Morphe. And of course, that's money going towards your platinum status and getting points, which turns into money. So I would just recommend you guys buy it from Ulta. That's actually where I got mine. And speaking of which, I also got the second rendition of this palette when they had changed the packaging. I'm really glad I waited because I think the newer packaging is much better. So the old packaging used to be soft touch and it was very messy. Also, there were no shade names on the palette. Some people received a little card with the names, but you guys know you want names on the palette when you're doing tutorials or review videos or looks on Instagram. You want that information. So as I said, they did change the fabric, which I really appreciate. It's really easy to wipe off. And then on the back, you do have all of the shades with their names, which I really appreciate. I would love it if the shade names could be written right under, which is something that Jaclyn did do for her Vault collection, which I think is great, but I'm happy to have the names on here in some capacity. So for the packaging, it just is this really pretty shiny white, and it has the Jaclyn Hill palette in Morphe written in silver lettering. This is a sturdy cardboard with a magnetic closure, which is my favorite palette packaging. So on the inside of the packaging, there is not a mirror. There is just a little note that says this palette is dedicated to all my loving subscribers. I think it would have been better if there was a mirror. Also, I'm pretty sure in her new Vault collection, she does have mirrors in those palettes, which I think is fantastic. And then here are all of your shades. I like that there is not a bunch of excess packaging because obviously the palette is already big considering it holds 35 shades. So for me, the only con is that there is not a mirror, especially with this large of a palette. A mirror would actually be helpful. I usually don't care, but for this palette, I would have liked that. But I, again, am really happy that I got the newer version of the packaging. So now I'm going to show you all of the shades and show you swatches on my arm. It's going to be a lot, so we'll see how I can make them all fit. Usually I like to include dupe pictures into these videos, but I went to the Temptalia website where I get all of my dupes. There were 65 pages of dupes. There is no way that I was going to put all of that into this video. I'm sorry if you're disappointed by that, but I will have the link for the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette dupes from the Temptalia website linked in the description box, so you guys can go look for yourself. You can also search the specific shade name if there is a specific shade in this palette that you're interested in, and look up dupes that way instead of looking at it as the entire palette dupe. So whatever would be most helpful for you, but I will have the link for that down below. I think Christine is amazing. I really appreciate her blog and the fact that she has that. So I want you guys to go give her some love, but it's just way too much for me to put into this video. But I can tell you, I think the whole shade selection as a group is pretty unique for a palette, but the shades individually are not. So that's why there's 65 pages of dupes. So here is what the palette looks like, and I'll read you off the shade names: in light, beam, silk cream, MFEO, faint, sissy, little lady. For row 2, creamsicle, butter, pooter, pukey, hunts, firework, queen. For row 3, obsessed, SBN, Hilster, Roxanne, Jax, Buns, Crayon Apple. Row number 4, Royalty, Twerk, Hustle, Meeks, 24/7, Chip, Mocha. And for our final row, Pool Party, Jada, Diva, Enchanted, Central Park, Soda Pop, Abyss. So here are the first 2 rows of the palette. The first shade is in Light, Beam, Silk Cream, MFEO, Faint, Sissy, Little Lady. Then we have row 2, Creamsicle, Butter, Pooter, Pukey, Hunts, Firework, and Queen. So those are the first 2 rows of the palette. Here are swatches of rows 3 and 4. For row 3, Obsessed, SBN, Hilster, Roxanne, Jax, Buns, and Crayon Apple. And those are all the shades in row number 3. These are all row number 4. We have Royalty, Twerk, Hustle, Meeks, 24/7, Chip, and Mocha. So all of these are row number 4. So here is the final row. Pool Party, Jada, Diva, Enchanted, Central Park, Soda Pop, Abyss. And that is the final row of swatches. So I was able to create several different looks with this palette. I actually lost track. I'm not sure how many I have at this point. I could have created even more looks, but I just ran out of filming days this month. Here is today's look. Use my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I'm using the Balm Batter Up Shadow Stick in the shade Curveball. From the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette, I am using this shade MFEO as my transition color. I'm using this shade Butter as my crease color, this shade Roxanne as my outer corner color, and this shade Firework as my lid color. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing MAC Blush in Painted Canyon. On my lips, I'm wearing the ColourPop Cream Luxe Lipstick in the shade Tiptoe. Here is today's look using my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I have the Maybelline Color Tattoo in Bold Gold. For my transition color, I am using Silk Cream. Buffed into my crease with a fluffy brush, I use Creamsicle. And more concentrated in my crease and outer corner, I use Pukey. And on my lid, I use the shade Queen. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing Sonia Kashuk's blush in Melon. On my lips, I'm wearing the Urban Decay Revolution lipstick in the shade Streak. Here's today's look. Use my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I'm using the Mally Shadow Stick Extra in Autumn Shimmer. I'm wearing MFEO as my transition color, Pooter as my crease color, SBN as my lid color, and Buns as my outer corner outer crease color. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing MAC Blush in Peaches and Cream. On my lips, I'm wearing the ColourPop Matte Luxe Lipstick in the shade Big Break. Here's today's look using my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I'm using the Maybelline Color Tattoo in the shade Caramel Cool, which is limited edition, but theBalm Batter Up Shadow Stick and Curveball is quite similar. I use Silk Cream as my first transition color, more of like an overall blend. Then I took the shade Butter as my more concentrated transition color. I used Hilster on my lid, Roxanne in my crease, and Jax as my outer corner color. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing MAC Blush in Painted Canyon. On my lips, I'm wearing the ColourPop Cream Luxe Lipstick in the shade Tiptoe. Here's today's look using my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I'm using the Melon Shadow Eyes Pencil in Snowy White, which is a matte white. I use Silk Cream as my transition color, Butter as my crease color. Then with a big fluffy brush, I took Creamsicle and blended over my transition and crease area. I use Roxanne in my outer corner, outer crease, and I use Pool Party on my lid. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing Anastasia's eyeshadow in China Rose. On my lips, I'm wearing the e.l.f. lip oil in Nude Kiss. Here's today's look using my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I'm using the L'Oreal Infallible eyeshadow crayon in Enduring Rose. I'm wearing Silk Cream as my transition color, Butter as my crease color, and Little Lady as my lid shade. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing MAC Blush in Sideshow You. On my lips, I'm wearing the ColourPop Ultra Matte Lip in Solo. Here's today's look using my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I'm using the Milani Shadow Eyes Pencil in Almond Cream. I applied Silk Cream with a really big fluffy brush as a transition color, and then I use Butter as a transition color as well, but with a little bit more of a slightly dense tapered blending brush. For my crease, I use the shade Roxanne. For my outer corner, outer crease, I use the shade Hunts. And for my lid shade, I use the color Twerk. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing MAC Blush in Painted Canyon. On my lips, I'm wearing the Tarte Tarte's Glossy Lip Paint in the shade Obvi. Here's today's look using my palette of the month. As a base on my lid, I'm using the Mally Shadow Stick Extra in Autumn Shimmer. I used MFEO as my transition color. Hustle on the center and outer part of my lid. Obsessed on the inner part of my lid. Mocha in my outer corner and crease. And then I blended a bit over Mocha with Silk Cream. Here what the eyes look like up close. On my cheeks, I'm wearing the Tarte Amazonian Clay Blush in Exposed. I lined my lips with a ColourPop Lippy Pencil in the shade Wet, which is a dupe for MAC Stone. And I filled in my lips completely with the Ciate Liquid Velvet in the shade Bittersweet. Here is today's look using my palette of the month. I recreated a tutorial from Kristen Davis. I will have her video linked up above. I exactly did her tutorial except for using the black shade. My look did not turn out quite as good as hers, but I did follow all of the same steps. So make sure you check out that tutorial if you would like to see how to do this look. For my transition color, I used Silk Cream. I went over that a little bit lower down into my crease, a little bit more concentrated with the shade Butter. Then in the outer portion of my crease, I packed on Roxanne and Jax in the very outer corner. I really layered all of those eyeshadows on top of one another, but focused these three more towards the outer part of my eye. I cut my crease with some concealer and then went over top of that with Jada. and then right over top of Jada with Pool Party, and then towards the outer portion of my lid, I used the shade Twerk and tried to blend them all together. On my cheeks, I'm wearing the Anastasia eyeshadow in China Rose. I actually just used up the last application of that today, but the shade is very similar to NARS Orgasm, except it has a deeper, more pigmented coral base. On my lips, I'm wearing the Tarte Glossy Lip Paint in the shade Obvi. But I really enjoy that there are so many shimmers and so many mattes. There are more mattes than shimmer, which I prefer because I use more mattes in a total eye look than I do shimmers. I usually just do a shimmer on the lid and then everything else is matte, so I do appreciate that. So one thing I want to say about the shade selection in this palette is that you do have that corner of those really bright shades, which I think is great. I'm really glad that she put those in the palette. I think all four of those perform really well and they're really beautiful. And then you have a ton of warm neutrals, which we all know Jaclyn loves and a lot of us love as well. People are trying to move away from that, I think, but I'm still very much a warm neutrals girl, so I love that she has all of those in there. A lot of different shades for transition and crease colors, but there are not that many cool tones in this palette. And what sucks for me is that there are some really beautiful cool tone shimmers and some really great, very dark cool tone shades, but she does not have light cool tone transition and crease colors. So for me, I'm not able to create a full cool tone eye look. I have to add in a more neutral or warm tone transition and crease color, which then just changes the overall look. So really the only negative I have with the color selection here is that I wish she took a couple of those warm matte browns and turned them into cool tone transition and crease color, so I could have created a full cool tone eye look. I was not able to do that with this palette, and I did not want to reach into any other palettes for the looks in this video. Normally I have no problem doing that, but when you have 35 shades, it would be nice if she had a couple cool tone, lighter transition and crease colors. And it would be awesome if she had a couple more brights, but I do think that she chose great brights that work really well with warm tone, crease, and transition colors. I would love it if there was a matte cream, because I use a matte cream every day to set my brow bone. Instead, she has two shimmery creams, one more neutral tone and one more warm yellow tone, intended for a really intense brow bone highlight or an inner corner color, which I think is great, but I don't think she needed two. I think she could have gone with just one and added a matte cream, because she does have a matte black, which a lot of people love. I never use matte black, but I understand why that was in here. But I think just as essential in an everyday eye look is a matte cream. If you do have a deeper skin tone, however, some of these lighter transition colors would work really well to set your primer. So that is just another little thing that I would have changed, but overall I am really happy with the color selection in this palette because I'm a warm tone lover. So now for the formula, the texture, and the pigmentation. So in this palette you do have two finishes, foiled and matte, which I love. I am not usually into satin finishes or light shimmers. I love foiled and matte. So I was really happy with the finishes in this palette. The foiled eyeshadows were amazing. They are a little bit more dimethicone, so they have a thicker base to them, but they do not feel as oily to me as some of the Juvia's Place eyeshadows, and they were super easy to work with. They were very easy to apply on my lid with a natural bristle brush, and they also worked really well and packed on with the finger. So all the foils performed so well for me, and I was very impressed with those shades. The mattes, however, aren't my most favorite. So when I dip my brush into the pan, I do get a good bit of kick up, but when I go to apply them on my eye, especially the lighter transition colors, which will definitely show up on my very fair skin tone, they just don't look as intense, and I have to build them up a bit, usually just 2 layers. It's not like I have to build and build and build. It's not a ridiculous amount of building, but compared to my Anastasia shadows I've been panning this summer and using a lot, those are so pigmented right from the jump, and these have to be built a little bit more. But for the deeper matte shades, those do seem to be more pigmented initially, especially Roxanne and Jax. I use both of those quite a few times in my looks, and those are much more pigmented than those lighter transition colors, and I didn't have to build those as much. Now this formula is not super powdery, but it isn't super stiff. I do think it is really easy to work with. I would just prefer if it was a little bit more pigmented initially and didn't need to be built up. I would say that the formula of the mattes is a little bit more pigmented than the Huda Beauty palettes that I reviewed recently in my July favorites and product updates, I talked about the Coral Obsessions palette. I think these are a little bit more pigmented than that palette in terms of the mattes, and they were really, really easy to blend out. So I do think that this is very good quality for a drugstore brand. I haven't found a ton of drugstore eyeshadows that I'm totally in love with, but I think that the quality of these are really, really good. So I'm actually very impressed with the pigmentation and the performance of these shades. Now with the foiled, I did have a little bit of transfer into my crease, but I expect that with more dimethicone foiled shadows because I have hooded eyes, so that wasn't a big deal for me. And I did want to mention it in case you have hooded eyes, you have that problem, you might have it with these as well, but it was not a big deal to me whatsoever. I also didn't really have any issues with these shadows fading throughout the day. The intense pigment lasted from when I applied it all the way to the end of the night. Also, I always apply a cream base under my shimmery lid shades just to make them more vibrant, help the pigment to stick to the eye, and I do think that was helpful with these foiled shadows, even though they are very pigmented on their own. So for my overall thoughts on this palette, I do think it is very good quality. I really like the color she has in this palette. I think it's really beautiful. However, this palette is not offering anything new to my collection, and that's because I already have quite a few warm neutral palettes. This is not something I regret buying by any means, but it's not something that I need in my collection. I don't have any plans of getting rid of it now. I'm going to hold on to it and use it, but I can see myself reaching for other palettes over this one because this one is bigger, and as I said, there's not any unique shades in this palette for my collection personally. However, I do think this would be a very good beginner palette, or for someone that's wanting to expand their collection and they don't have that many shadows. I think this would be a great palette to give someone because it covers so many bases. Now, if your friend or family member likes more cool tone mattes, you might have to pull in another palette to go along with this one, but this does cover a lot of your bases, and I am really impressed with what Jaclyn offered here. So guys, I would love to know your thoughts if you have tried out the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette, and I would love to know if you guys have any plans on picking up the Vault collection. I am interested in the purple palette and the more warm tone palette, but I don't know if I'm interested enough to actually purchase them. We shall see. I'm definitely gonna wait for some more reviews on those, especially since that collection has been reformulated. But anyway, I would love to know your thoughts on the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palettes, as well as any other Morphe palettes that you guys have tried. I did actually a while ago film a review on the Morphe 35O palette and some of the brushes that I had tried from them, so I'll have that linked up in the cards as well. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye guys.